It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Monday, February 5th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is bummed for Travis Konecny that he didn't get the million.
Yeah, he'll live.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on the app formerly known as Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We are at Locked On Flyers on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. You can find us over on YouTube or on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ, we are going to get into that big Olympics news, but just want to touch on the Elias Lindholm trade because I think, that was one of the biggest ones that we expected to maybe come down the pike prior to the trade deadline. And I'm just wondering for the Flyers, do you think that moves up the timeline for any Flyers trades?
Well, with he and Monahan gone, Henrique is the next one. So then I still don't think Lawton's like the next one. I think because I think
Or
people
Walker?
could get moved up. I think my feeling is I think people know that hey, Lawton can play center, but he hasn't played center regularly in a long time. For a full season, he hasn't done that. And even though he's good on faceoffs and everything, I think teams are not going to be willing to give up. There's not. By the way, there's not a ton of teams left with firsts in 24 or 25. That's just a fact.
That are contenders because they've already traded them away.
Correct. Yeah. Yes, that's the key. So that's a fact, right? So I think the defensemen now are the ones that are going to go next because the teams cherry picked the best centers, and then goalies will be after that.
Right. And that's why I think there's a slight chance that a Walker deal could get moved up just because he's a defenseman. And that tends to be something that contending teams are looking for more often than anything else, other than a goalie or a depth forward. But I think defensemen are really at a premium at trade deadline. But we'll see if that changes anything. Just curious as, we get closer and closer to that March trade deadline. Meanwhile, the big announcement at the NHL All Star Weekend is that the NHL players will be back in the Olympics for the next two Olympics, at least in 2026 and 2030. 2026 is in Italy, it's in Milan, and one other city that they're kind of joint hosting. And they have not yet chosen a city for 2030. I know Salt Lake is back in contention for that one, so it could be back in North America, but absolutely big news here, right?
Yeah, it's big news. I mean, Connor McDavid was happy. He's not been to an Olympics yet. So that's good news for him, good news for people that want to watch him for sure. The thing that's tricky about this, I have a friend who I went to high school with who lives in Italy. And I had him look for anything written about the new stadium, and they don't hear anything other than, yeah, they broke ground, and they're late on all of it. So I still think there's a chance that they end up playing in Torino where they still have a rink.
Right.
That's just my feeling because we'll see. We'll see how fast they can get this thing built, but it really struggled at the beginning to even break ground. So we'll see. That's one of the interesting things about that. But yeah, as far as 2030, I would have to think it's going to be in the United States. I just have this feeling that that's the way it's going to go. And I don't know who else is bidding on it besides Salt Lake. I haven't really dug into it yet, but I know I do get emails from the Olympic people, and at some point they will send me, because I've attended a few press conferences where they've tried to sell it to different cities, and it's interesting. And I don't mind going to those because you get a lot of the heads of the panels answering a lot of questions, and they answer NHL ones too, so it's good.
Yeah, I think that originally Vancouver was going to bid, but they withdrew. So we'll see if anybody else is looking to bid in North America. But right now, I think the only other options are like France and Sweden,
Yeah,
if I
France, I do
recall.
think has their hat in the ring. Um, I would take Salt Lake over France. That's just me.
Yeah, well, and France is hosting the Summer Olympics this summer.
Right.
So
So they have that. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So, we'll see how all of that goes. But in the meantime, I think the other kind of side news, which is very interesting to announce on All Star Weekend, to say we're not going to have an All Star Weekend next year.
Right.
But in order to kind of ramp up for the Olympic participation, they're going to have a four nations face-off tournament next February in lieu of the All Star Weekend. So NHL players only. So no prospects,
Right.
not best on best in total, but NHL players from Canada, Finland, Sweden, and the US will have that mid-season tournament. And I think it's I think it's good to take a break from All-Star Weekend. I think that'll make it even better if and when it returns, because people will actually be missing it at that point, because you have this Four Nations face off, and then the following year it's the Olympic tournament. So then you really have a couple of years off to before people could get excited about it coming back.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's good. I'm a little bummed that there's no real European teams besides
I
Sweden and
know, like
Finland because there's so many good players that are just not going to be able to play because they don't have a full country behind them or whatever. They should have a couple of all-star teams from Europe in this as well. That to me, then it's as close to best on best as you could get.
right. You go back to the World Cup of hockey
Yeah.
when we had Team Europe,
Yeah.
and Team North America, which again is the greatest hockey team ever assembled is Team
It
North
was so
America.
good, and
Oh,
honestly, it felt like everything against them was against them in that tournament. It was just so bad. Even the refereeing seemed like it was against them after a while. Like they just, they could have really done well in that tournament. I felt bad. I liked the team a lot.
yeah, me too. But Team Europe was kind of weird, but
Yes,
I think, but it also like felt good that those players could
it
be
did.
involved. So I do think there's something to it. But I think in order for tournament length, maybe that's why they capped it at four teams.
Right,
Just in terms of how long it might take. I believe that they're going to be played over the course of a couple of weeks in two cities, one in Canada, one in the US. So I do think that it's a really interesting twist to kind of get rid of this institution, at least temporarily, for of the All Star game and announce that at All Star Weekend.
listen, people will find something to bitch about for this tournament too, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Also, the LA Kings fired McClellan as their head coach. Really interesting timing. 3-5-2 in their last 10. They've been struggling. They're just holding on to a wild card spot at this time. But I think that for a team with high expectations, this is not something I would have expected at the beginning of the season. They just extended him last summer.
Right. At the beginning of the season, no. But on my Tuesday spot on Sirius, we got into like who's really in it, who isn't, and I pronounced the Kings dead on arrival. I did. And and they won after that. They won that, last game before the break, but over Nashville. But I also feel like Rob Blake felt like they were dead on arrival the way they were playing too. Because those three wins were more than the last 10. It was like three out of their last like 17 or something.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I don't think it was shocking. I just don't know if they're going to get the same results as Edmonton because they don't have the same kind of superstars. So that's the tough part. I could still see them falling out of this.
Yeah, I think so as well. But we'll see if coaching change makes a difference in LA. In the meantime, One of the more notable moments of All Star Weekend, Marty Walsh, who's the director of the NHLPA, railed into Arizona and the process happening there. And I think, it took a lot of people by surprise just in terms of the intensity of Marty Walsh's statements, and that, they really don't have a solution there yet. And in the meantime, there's expansion talk happening.
Right. I don't blame Marty Walsh in the sense that since that report came out from the Athletic that it was all a, a a query of NHL players and it was all anonymous. One player said the rink is like dog poop. Another player said that it doesn't feel like you're in the show when you're there, and I think that's really telling. And
At
so
Mullet Arena,
at
where they're
Mullet
currently
Arena.
playing.
Yeah, at
Yeah.
Mullet Arena. And so somehow they were only ranked 3rd worst, but whatever. I think it also because it had to do with the weather, and I think there were other factors. But
Right,
but that's a telling thing, and that's your constituency, right? Having to go into that rink and no end is in sight. Like, you might still have to do it for 2 more years, but that's only if Arizona signs something soon, which they haven't. And I told you I checked with a construction guy who I know in that area, and nothing was imminent 3 weeks ago. So maybe they're gonna step up the process, or maybe they're just saying that because Marty Walsh went and said something. I don't know if something's happening quickly though, and I can tell you there's a lot of skepticism there, which I think at this point is fair, right? Because we thought they were supposed to at least have the memo signed for the land like months ago, and it hasn't
right.
happened. So that's where skepticism comes in.
Yep, yep. And, amongst all of that, of course, we know about the Salt Lake bid for
Yes.
expansion. Gary Bettman also mentioned Omaha, Cincinnati, and Atlanta, along with Kansas City, as potential cities. Didn't really mention Houston again, which was interesting.
Yeah,
But
I think Houston did get a vague mention, but like not as a new, but it
yeah,
seems like the Houston thing's out because that owner didn't want to own. He only wanted to, rent out the arena, right? So
right.
I think that was the problem with that. Cincinnati, I just don't see. I'm sorry, I just don't think that's going to happen. Um, the Omaha one, if you remember, I think we talked about it on the show. I had interviewed that reporter, and they did do very well when they had that test game, that test NHL preseason
Hmm.
game, right? So
Yeah.
I think they're
Some
still
huge
in.
sports fans there, just
Yes,
in general. I
yeah,
mean,
I think they're in the mix. I do feel
yeah,
like they're in it,
they sold out Cornhusker Stadium for women's volleyball, so I'm
right?
sure they'll show up
Yeah,
for
and that's the
hockey.
thing. I think they're in the mix legitimately.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, they have to here's the other thing though. The other thing is the TV contract's up soon, and the NHL's trying their best to include Arizona in that TV deal because of what they mean um, geographically for TV audiences. I don't know if that's going to end up happening, but that's what they're trying, Rachel, and that's a part of this.
Yeah.
If that wasn't at stake, I have a feeling this would all be over already.
All right. Well, more to come on that front. In the meantime, there was an All-Star Weekend, and we will
Yes.
talk about Travis Konecny and everything that went down on that coming up next.
It's an important point in the season, Flyers fans, regardless of where we are in the current standings. I want to remind you that you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. Fans could also play daily fantasy NFL, NBA, MLB, and college football when they're in season on Sleeper, and entries can be made in under a minute. All you have to do is pick whether NHL superstars like Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby, or Austin Matthews, plus Flyers All Stars like Travis Konecny will record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus minus, and more in a given game. To win 100 times bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Flyers fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code Locked On NHL and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code Locked On NHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability.
Coming up on tomorrow's show, it will be Phantoms Tuesday, of course, and we will be talking about the AHL All Star Game as well, with Samu Tuamala involved. And we will be recording that early on Tuesday morning. So the episode will show up in your feeds a little bit later than usual, but it will be there. So keep an eye out for it. In the meantime, we did have an NHL All Star Game. Of course, Travis Konecny on Team McKinnon was eliminated in the semifinal. Both semifinals went to a shootout, remarkably. And then it was like, I think, a tough game until, the last couple of minutes in that final, where, of course, the quote unquote home team of T. Matthews winning it overall.
Yeah, my joke, but it really wasn't a joke. Like the first thing that came into my mind was, with all these Leaf scorers, if they actually had Shesterkin as a goalie, they probably
Yeah.
would win a cup, right? Did that
Yeah,
run
yeah.
across your mind? It did, right?
Yeah.
Like, look how good they look with good goaltending.
I know. Of course, it was a 3-on-3.
Yeah,
Travis Konecny was with Oliver Bjorkstrand and Elias Lindholm, which actually they looked like
that's
they were
pretty
having a
good.
lot of
Yeah,
fun.
yeah. He
Yeah.
definitely Konechny was trying to set up more than shoot. You
Yeah.
could tell that, and I think he talked about that after. Like he didn't want to be a selfish, all-star guy. So that's fine. It was fun. I'm going to be honest. I thought the game was better than the skills. And actually, I thought for the first time in a while, the games were good. Maybe because they did go to shootout. I'm not sure. But I
Yeah.
felt like the competition was pretty good. And I think the prize helped. So at least it went out on a good note. That's the good part.
Yeah. Connor McDavid all weekend was like,
Unbelievable.
the gloves are off. I'm in this. Like, this is,
Yeah.
I care. And I think that was kind of infectious for everybody except for Nikita Kucherov, of course, who
Right.
was like, I don't care. I'm not trying. And the fans like were booing
Well, he did
him during
try in
the
the game,
skills
but he
cup.
certainly did not try in
Not
the
in the
in the
skills
skills.
comp.
I give McDavid credit too because he even said during the
Yeah.
game like his legs were a little heavy because he's doing the fastest skater. He did everything. He was great. He was a great ambassador.
Yeah.
A lot of credit to him, and he got some
Yeah.
extra cash.
You kind of say, well, in the skills comp, like, does Connor McDavid need another $1 million? Well, first of all, it's for pride. Second of all, like, I think I was very skeptical of making it an individual competition and not related to the teams. I still don't necessarily like that not everybody was involved. And I thought maybe
Right.
they could have had, like, either the passing or the accuracy competition up first and have everybody involved and then just eliminate 8 people off the bat.
Hmm.
Just the way that they did it, but just start with everybody instead
Right.
of just
Right. Right.
12 people. I think maybe that's the one thing I would have done differently, just to give everybody who was invited to the All-Star game a shot. But other than that, I did like how the skills comp went overall.
It was long though.
It was very long, but I do think that it was a little better given that it was an individual competition.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Look, the fastest skater, hardest shots, those are always the favorites. It really was amazing to watch McDavid um, do his crossovers before the end and
Ugh,
crossing the finish line. It's hard to believe a human could go that fast. So that was really impressive to see. And then, honestly, with the hardest shot, I don't think they had all the best guys in it. I don't.
no. I mean, I think Makar has a really good shot, and so I was glad he won
Yeah.
of those
And it
guys.
does show you a smaller guy. It really is about technique, your stick, the
Mhm.
flex, how you do
Yeah.
it, all of that. And he's got it down. Like it's perfect. And look, Pedersen has one of the best shots in the league, but everybody knows he's not really 100-mile-an-hour guy on average.
No. No, he's just got a really good shot that's more consistent.
In
So you
game,
see
it's
it.
deadly.
Yeah.
It's deadly. But
Yeah.
so there were a few guys that I felt like, yeah, now Miller was interesting because I don't think his shot used to be that hard, but he has bulked up so much and so strong now that that's really helped him. I almost think on the next one, I don't know how you feel about this, that they should have less of a running start because I really feel like in the old days when the guys were even using the wooden
It was
sticks, it
stationary.
was more stationary. I don't believe they had that much of a lead up.
Right. Right. Yeah, I'd have to go back and look at the video,
Right.
but it feels like you're telling the truth here
Yeah. I
from
mean,
what I recall.
memory could lie, but it just feels that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I did love that they had Connor Bedard there,
Yes.
and Sidney Crosby to do the passes for the one-timers. I think that it was just good to get him involved in that
Although
way.
I was cringing when he was on the bench. I'm like, please don't have a puck go there. Please don't have because we see so many pucks go to the bench in games that you never know. Like hockey's weird. Like the puck will find you. And I just thought, man, because he's just not wearing the cage. Uh, he's gutsy, man. I mean, I gotta tell you, if I was a few months, and he's not even a few months, if I was what,
Mm-mm.
6 weeks, 8 weeks out of a broken jaw, I wouldn't be there. No way.
Well, it was good to see him,
Yes.
out there
And Crosby
and Crosby.
for some of the garbage that he took because he was somewhere skating the day before and we talked about it when they were picking with the draft, but guess what, he still was there. I don't have a problem with it. Everybody's allowed to have a life too, and if there was something that he was going to do, he could have easily just said no, I'm not going, but he didn't do that. He went and did both.
Yep. Yep. And obviously with McKinnon leading his all-star team, and he knew he was gonna end up on McKinnon's team,
Right.
to begin with, it was, of course, like, to support him as well, and
Yeah.
so
I mean, they'll
it was
probably be
good.
next door neighbors in Cole Harbor like in 20 years.
Yeah, sharing beers on the front porch
Right.
talking about the old days, but
Yeah.
I think that, it was, yeah, I think it was really good overall. I mean, even, like, the mascot showdown stuff was kinda
I
fun.
didn't watch that. I didn't.
Yeah,
I'll
well,
admit it.
I didn't watch the whole thing, but I saw, like, little videos of dodgeball and the
Okay.
hockey game they played. They seem to have it out for Gritty in the dodgeball, which fair, I guess, but,
There was a difference though in between periods. So for like the All-Star game in between periods here, they were talking about the game. In Canada, they were already breaking down the Olympic teams. Um,
wow.
so that tells you the difference what was going on in each country. And the thing that was really apparent for Canada is they got a goaltending problem now.
Yep,
They do.
they do. Well, we talked about it for World Juniors, and that's,
Yeah.
like, the up and coming goaltenders, so
Yeah.
should be interesting. And there's a lot of talk about how this could be the best team USA put together.
Yeah, I think going back to the World Cup team, I agree with that, and
Yeah,
I watched that World Cup team intently, and yeah, I do think this team will have just as much talent, maybe more.
yeah, yeah, I think so. As a side note, I was not familiar with Tate McRae
Me
prior to this
neither.
All-Star weekend. Her set was real solid. I was like, she's a good pop star. I will
I turned
definitely
it off.
be,
I'll be honest, I did.
well,
You know what?
that's
And
not your thing. I like pop music, and I thought she was great. So
I'll
I
tell you
will
what
look
made
more
me
into
turn it
her.
off. Honestly, when she had the shot in front of the goalie pads, I'm like, that's something that has been done a million times over by just
She looked great.
she
You
no,
have fun.
she does look great, but the problem is any influencer does that thing, and I'm just thinking she probably didn't need to do that, but whatever. That was my it wasn't a
Well,
g
she's
it's
been a hockey fan her whole life,
I
and it
know.
was great for her, and I thought that
But she has
seeing her
talent,
performance
it's
made
not for
me
me.
appreciate it. Well, that's fine if it's not for you, but it was for me, so and
Yeah,
I enjoyed it. So, I will be listening to more Tate McRae
there you go.
in the future. In the meantime, it is Monday, so we will, of course, be having our Nemesis of the week, and we will do that coming up next.
Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. If you like me, Super Bowl Sunday all about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and placing some super bets. Like I said, I'm going to put out a menu, but it's going to be late in the week because I'm going to be on the road for a while. Um, this Super Bowl, I'm still going with the over. I really feel like with the way both teams are playing, you could say what you want about Brock Purdy, but he gets the job done, and Mahomes certainly gets the job done. And I think there's going to be a lot of scoring. FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W or two or three. Not only can you bet on who will win the Super Bowl, on who will win Super Bowl 58. But FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and so much more. New customers can join today, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit fanduel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's fanduel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe. Just a reminder, like I said, the AHL All Star Game was yesterday and today. And so we are going to record early Tuesday morning so we can talk about the week that was for the Phantoms and the All Star Game and get that all to you. Uh, Last week, we talked about the Flyers resetting for the upcoming week. And last Friday, we talked about, what the opponents were for this upcoming week, the Panthers and the Jets and the Kraken, and that, this is just an opportunity to get back in winning ways. And that is my nemesis for this week, getting back in gear. I think, from a Flyers perspective, they really need to step it up over these next few games, and maybe hopefully they'll have made some adjustments from a defensive structure perspective and such things. And, making sure that Sam Ersson has the support he needs to be the number one goaltender. This is all stuff that we talked about over the break. And it's also a reminder for me personally to get back in gear as the games get going again. And I'm excited to see some Flyers hockey again.
Yeah, excited to see the hockey. My nemesis will be, how long will that first Tuesday practice be, even though it's a morning skate? I think you have to have it be pretty long because the players, they can't do anything on Monday, right? They're all traveling. Then you're playing a top team in the league on Tuesday. And so my thing is, you've got to really do some different things on the power play, still ranked 30th, and a few other things. And if you just have the basic morning skate where the guys show up, they do a few things, and you're done in 35 minutes, it may not help them for the second half. So I feel like this is the most important practice or morning skate of the year. I really feel that way. So we'll see how that all gets handled.
Yeah, I think so. It's just it is going to be that challenging week, and I really think the Flyers have it in them to play, better against these top teams. We've seen it before
Yeah,
that
but
they
they
can
still need
do
the
it.
structure to do it.
Exactly, but we've seen the potential, and we know that they already have the drive and
Hmm.
they don't give up. They still have
Right.
never given up in a
No.
game, and I think that it's, they have it within them to do it, and I have faith that they can. It's just a matter of execution and, maybe scoring a couple more goals than they have been
Always help.
recently, and that should do it. But yeah, really excited to get back to Flyers action this week. We will do so. We'll also talk about that Panthers game on tomorrow's show. So stay tuned for that. And as a reminder, we always want to hear from you. So if you've got mailbag questions, you can send them to us via Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail or comment over on YouTube. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Have a great Monday, everyone.